Excuse me, who invited you here? Nobody, my daughter. I just came to see. You came to see my wedding, like it's a free show? I meant no disrespect. Pick up your tray and leave. Did you really think that someone like you belongs at my wedding? Look at what you've done. Now the guests will think I have a poor family.
Now, I need you to pause for a second, because what you just saw is only the beginning. This woman, this quiet old woman with her scattered rice and her crooked head tie, did not cry, did not beg, did not even flinch. And that stillness, that unbothered, unshaken peace in her eyes, that was the first sign that Adaeze had made the worst mistake of her life. Because there are some people you can humiliate in front of a crowd, and there are some people whose silence is the loudest judgment you will ever receive. Stay with me. If you're new here, subscribe, drop your country flag in the comments, and let's get back into this story. The food hit the ground before anyone understood what was happening. 1 second, the old woman was sitting quietly at the edge of the compound, holding her tray of jollof rice with both hands, the way someone holds something they worked all night to prepare. The next second, the tray was on the floor. Rice scattered across the red dust like broken promises. Fried plantain lay crushed under the heel of a white wedding gown. And the bride was laughing. Not giggling, not smirking, laughing, head thrown back, diamonds catching the last gold light of the evening sun, one hand pressed to her chest like she needed help containing her own amusement.
Did you really think,
she said, loud enough for the whole compound to hear,
that someone like you belongs at my wedding?
The crowd stirred. Some guests laughed nervously, some clapped. A few exchanged glances but said nothing, because when a woman wearing that much lace and that many jewels decides something is funny, most people decide it is funny too. The old woman did not move. She sat exactly where she had been, her wrapper neat, her gray head tie slightly crooked from the collision, her hands now resting in her lap. She looked up at the scattered food on the ground. Then she looked up at the bride. She did not cry. She did not beg. She did not even flinch. That was the first thing that felt wrong. Nobody noticed the groom go still. He had been standing near the high table, holding a glass of wine, talking to one of his groomsmen when it happened. When the tray hit the ground, he turned the way everyone turned. But unlike everyone else, he did not look at the bride. He did not look at the scattered food. He looked at the old woman's face. And whatever he saw there made the wine glass lower slowly from his lips. His groomsman was still talking. The DJ had paused the music, sensing the commotion, then started it again because no one had told him to stop. The bride was still performing for the crowd, gesturing at the old woman's threadbare blouse, saying something about how this was a 5-million-naira wedding and not a place for people who sell roadside food for a living. The guests closest to her laughed. Someone at the back shouted, "Oya, carry your tray, go!" And the laughter spread. But the groom had not laughed, had not moved, had not spoken. He was just watching the old woman with an expression nobody near him could quite read. The old woman's name was Mama Adaeze, but nobody at that wedding knew that yet. She had arrived 2 hours earlier, before the reception crowd thickened, carrying her tray on her head, the way she had carried things on her head for 50 years. She had asked one of the gatemen where she could sit, and he had pointed her toward the edge of the compound without really looking at her, the way people point at things they consider beneath their attention. She had found a small wooden bench near the catering tent and sat down. She had not asked for anything. She had not tried to sell her food to the wedding guests, which was strange, because why else would a food seller come to a wedding she had not been invited to? She had simply sat there, tray in her lap, watching the celebration with quiet eyes. A few guests had glanced at her and looked away. One woman had whispered to her husband that someone should ask what she was doing there. But nobody had acted on it because the pepper soup was good and the music was pleasant, and it was easier to let it go. Then the bride had seen her. Adaeze had noticed the old woman from across the compound during what was supposed to be a beautiful moment, her new husband's hand in hers, the photographer crouching to get the golden hour shot, guests arranged perfectly behind them. But her eye had snagged on the figure at the edge of the frame, the old wrapper, the tired face, the tray that had no business being at a wedding this expensive. Something in Adaeze twisted. She could not have explained it clearly, not the specific shape of it, but she had spent 3 years building this wedding in her imagination. The lace had been ordered from Lagos. The hall decorator had charged her more than her father earned in 6 months. She had curated every guest, every detail, every moment, and this woman, this stranger with her roadside tray, was sitting in the corner of it like a stain. She had handed her bouquet to her maid of honor. She had walked across the compound. She had not planned what happened next, or perhaps she had, somewhere beneath thought, somewhere where pride makes its decisions before the mind can review them. "Excuse me," she had said, standing over the old woman. "Who invited you here?" The old woman had looked up slowly. "Nobody, my daughter," she said. Her voice was calm, almost peaceful. "I just came to see." "To see?" Adaeze repeated. She looked around to make sure people were listening. They were.
Came to see my wedding, like it's a free show. I meant no disrespect. Pick up your tray and leave.
"Pick up your tray and leave." The old woman had reached for her tray, but not fast enough, or perhaps Adaeze's hands had moved before patience could intervene, and the tray had gone over, and the rice had gone everywhere, and the evening had changed its shape entirely. Now the bride was accepting congratulations for it. That was the only way to describe what was happening. Guests were patting her arm, telling her she had done the right thing, that these airy people always tried to take advantage of celebrations. Someone brought her a fresh glass of champagne. Her mother was nodding proudly from the family table. Adaeze felt electric, powerful, like a woman who had just defended something precious. She did not notice that her husband had crossed the compound. She did not notice that he had crouched down beside the old woman, quietly, the way a man kneels when he is in the presence of something sacred. She did not notice the way his hand found the old woman's hand, or the way the old woman closed her eyes briefly, the way people close their eyes when something they had been holding inside finally finds somewhere to rest. She noticed none of this because she was too busy being celebrated. The first sign something was wrong was when the music stopped. Not faded, stopped, and this time the DJ did not start it again. Emeka stood up slowly. His hand was still holding the old woman's hand. He turned to face the compound, the tables, the guests, the fairy lights strung between the trees, his new bride with her champagne glass halfway to her lips. He did not shout. Emeka had never been a man who needed to shout. "I want to introduce someone," he said. His voice carried the way quiet voices carry when everything else had gone silent. Every head turned. Adaeze's champagne glass finished its journey to her mouth, but she did not drink. Something was tightening in her chest that she did not yet have a name for. "This woman," Emeka said, "is my mother." The compound did not erupt. It went the other direction, deeper into silence, the kind that has weight, the kind you can feel pressing against your eardrums. Adaeze's glass lowered. She was searching his face for something, a sign that this was not what it looked like, that there had been a misunderstanding, that the old woman was perhaps a distant relative, a family friend, someone whose connection to Emeka was softer, less catastrophic than what he had just said. But Emeka was not looking at her. He was looking at his mother, and the expression on his face was one Adaeze had never seen him wear in 2 years of courtship. Raw, unguarded, the face of a man who had been carrying a grief he never showed her. "She told me not to put her at the high table," he said quietly, to the compound, to no one in particular. "She said she didn't want to make me uncomfortable. She said I had worked so hard for this day, and she didn't want people to look at me differently because of where I came from." His jaw tightened. "So she sat in the corner, with her tray, watching." He finally looked at Adaeze, "And you threw her food on the ground." If the silence before had been heavy, this silence was something else entirely. This silence had a temperature. People were not looking at Emeka anymore. They were not looking at Mama Ese. They were looking at Adaeze, and the quality of how they were looking had reversed completely. 30 minutes ago they had laughed with her, clapped for her, handed her champagne. Now they were looking at her the way people look at something they wish they had not touched. Adaeze opened her mouth. She had always been good with words. It was one of the things Emeka first admired about her, the way she could navigate any room, any conversation, any social situation with precision. But no words came. The place where her words lived had gone completely empty. "Emeka," she started. "Don't," he said, not angry, worse than angry, tired. "Please don't." He turned back to his mother. He bent down and began gathering the scattered rice with his bare hands, the way a son does things, not thinking about his white agbada, not thinking about the guests, not thinking about the photographer who was still inexplicably taking pictures, just gathering. Mama Ese touched his arm. "Leave it," she said softly. "It's all right." "It is not all right, Mama." "Emeka." Her voice was firm in the gentle way that only mothers manage. "Leave the rice. Sit with me." And he did. He sat beside her on her small wooden bench, this man in his wedding agbada, and the image of it, the image of them together at the edge of the compound, while the fairy light swayed above an utterly silent crowd, was something no one present would forget for the rest of their lives. Adaeze did not remember walking to the bridal suite. She was simply there, sitting on the edge of the bed, her dress enormous around her, her jewelry suddenly feeling like something she was trapped inside rather than decorated by. Her maid of honor came in, then left without speaking, because there was nothing to say that would help. Her mother came in, sat beside her, and started to say something about how Emeka had embarrassed her publicly, and they could take this matter to his family. "Stop, Mama," Adaeze said. "But I said stop." Her mother stopped, and in the quiet, Adaeze sat with the full shape of what she had done. Not the version where she was defending her wedding, the real version, an old woman who had traveled, she didn't know how far, to watch her son get married, who had sat quietly in a corner so she wouldn't cause trouble, who had held her tray of food in her lap and watched with tired, loving eyes. And Adaeze had walked across the compound and destroyed that moment on purpose, in front of everyone, because the woman's wrapper was not expensive enough for the occasion. She pressed her mouth over her. The tears, when they came, were not the pretty kind. Outside, the reception had not resumed, really. The DJ had put on something soft and low. A few guests were eating quietly, speaking in murmurs. Most were watching the wooden bench where Emeka still sat with his mother, talking in low voices that no one could hear. At some point, one of the older women at the family table, Emeka's aunt, stood up, walked across the compound, and sat on the other side of Mama Adaeze. She held her hand without saying anything. Then another woman joined them, then another. Nobody organized it, nobody announced it. It simply happened, women gravitating to a wound that needed covering. Mama Adaeze accepted all of it with the same stillness she had worn since the tray hit the ground. She had known, perhaps, that something like this might happen. Perhaps that was why she had come in her ordinary clothes, with her ordinary tray. Perhaps she had wanted to see, honestly see, what kind of world her son was marrying into before it was too late for questions. Whether she had gotten an answer was something only she knew. When Adaeze finally came back out, an hour later, face clean of makeup, the enormous dress exchanged for a simple iro and buba she had packed in her overnight bag, the compound had thinned. Many guests had left. A few remained, finishing their food quietly. She walked across the compound, towards the wooden bench. Emeka watched her come. He did not move toward her. He did not move away. She stopped in front of her mother, and for a long moment the words failed again. Then she lowered herself to the ground, not to a chair, not to the bench, to the ground, in the way a person kneels when they have run out of anything else to offer. "Mama," she said. Her voice broke on the single word. The old woman looked at her for a long time. Emeka did not speak. The remaining guests watched. "I cannot explain what I did. I have no excuse that is good enough. I am only asking you not to let this be the last thing between us." The compound waited. Mama Adaeze reached out slowly, her hand, the hand that sold food for 19 years, that packed school bags and ironed uniforms and worked through heat and rain for one son's future, rested on Adaeze's bowed head. She did not say she forgave her. She did not say everything was fine. She said something quieter and more honest than either of those things. "Get up, my daughter," she said. "Get up." They say in the villages that pride is a loud thing that travels alone. But shame, real shame, the kind that teaches, that one is quiet. It walks beside you for years. It corrects your hand before you raise it wrong. It changes the way you enter a room. Adaeze did not become a different person that night. She became someone who remembered. And every time in the years that followed that she felt the old pull toward cruelty, the small satisfying power of putting someone beneath you, she would feel the ghost of a wedding gown against red dust, and she would choose differently. Some lessons cost a wedding, some cost more. The question is never whether you will be taught. The question is only whether you survive the lesson humble enough to be changed by it. And that is the thing about pride. It is always loudest right before the fall. If the story moved something in you, drop a comment below. Tell me what Adaeze should have done differently. Tell me if you think Mama Adaeze forgave her, really forgave her. I want to read every single one. If you are not subscribed yet, do that now. New stories drop every week, and you do not want to miss what is coming next. And the video on your screen right now, watch that. I will see you over there.